What if confidence wasn't who you are, but simply energy, untamed, waiting to be shaped? Picture the moment. A crowded room. Conversations ripple like low static. Then, someone enters. No grand announcement, no elaborate performance. Yet, the air shifts. Heads turn. Attention sharpens. Everyone feels it before anyone names it. Confidence. But what exactly just happened? Why do we instinctively label that magnetic presence as confidence, as if it were a fixed personality trait? We rarely stop to question it. We assume some are born with it, others destined to live without it. But that assumption may be one of the greatest illusions of human psychology. Confidence is not charisma, it is not charm, and it is not blind faith in oneself. Strip away the cultural slogans, the endless books promising to unlock it, and what remains is something far simpler and far more unsettling. Confidence is energy, pure, primal energy. It is the biological current running through your body, the invisible signal others detect, the force that can be magnified or muted depending on how it is controlled. This is why confidence can be faked, projected, weaponized. This is why you can feel terrified on the inside, yet still project an aura of certainty that others mistake for unshakable conviction. The truth is not that you must be confident, but that you must direct energy in such a way that others believe you are. And once they believe, the illusion becomes reality. Few thinkers captured this truth more brutally than Niccolò Machiavelli. Writing 500 years ago, he dismantled the comforting belief that morality governs human affairs. For him, power was not about honesty or sincerity, was about perception, control, and influence. What mattered was not who a ruler really was, but how he appeared to be. If he appeared strong, loyal, and confident, people would follow him, even if his true nature was otherwise. Machiavelli's insights were not cynical exaggerations. They were observations of how human beings are wired. And here lies the unsettling parallel. Confidence, too, is less about who you are internally, and more about how your energy shapes the perception of others. We think confidence originates in thought, in the calm conviction that I believe in myself. But Machiavelli would scoff at such naivety. He would argue that people do not see your thoughts, they only see the signals you emit, the strengths you project, the certainty you perform. In this sense, confidence is a performance of energy, not a reflection of truth. Yet this revelation carries both danger and liberation. If confidence is energy, then it is not some mystical trait reserved for the chosen few. It is a resource anyone can learn to harness. Just as a ruler bends perception to his will, so too can the individual learn to channel their inner energy outward, turning nerves into poise, uncertainty into presence, and silence into gravity. But the reverse is equally true. If confidence is only energy, then it can be manipulated. Entire societies can be led astray by those who master its performance. History is filled with figures who projected unshakable confidence, and because of it gained trust, loyalty, and obedience even when their ideas were hollow or destructive. Humanity has always been drawn to those who seem certain, even if certainty is an illusion. So the question is no longer do you have confidence? The question is, what will you do with the energy you already possess? Will you learn to command it, shaping it into a tool of influence, or will you allow others to wield theirs against you? To understand confidence as energy is to uncover a hidden lever of human power, and to study it through the lens of Machiavelli is to recognize its double-edged nature, dangerous when left unchecked, but liberating when mastered. What follows is not a manual of empty self-help platitudes, nor a call to simply believe in yourself. What follows is an exploration into the psychology, history, and philosophy of confidence as pure energy of force that can build empires or destroy them, elevate individuals or enslave them. Confidence is not who you are, it is what you control. And if you can master this control, you may begin to see the world and yourself in an entirely different way. From childhood, we are fed the same slogans about confidence. Believe in yourself. Fake it until you make it. Stand tall, smile wide, and the world will reward you. But beneath these tidy phrases lies a profound misunderstanding. Confidence has been marketed as a mindset, a static trait, or an optimistic outlook on life. The truth, however, is far less sentimental and far more primal. Confidence is not a thought, it is energy. To understand this, we must step outside the human world for a moment. Imagine a wolf facing off against a rival. The animal does not pause to rehearse positive affirmations. It does not convince itself through reason. Instead, its body swells, hair bristling, chest expanding, teeth bared. Its size has not changed, but its energy radiates outward in a display of dominance. Birds spread their feathers, frogs inflate their throats. Even the simplest organisms project power when threatened. What we call confidence in human beings is merely the sophisticated continuation of these ancient evolutionary displays. Humans have layered culture and language on top of this instinct, but the foundation remains the same. When a person adjusts their posture, steadies their breath, and controls their tone, they are not just performing theatrics, they are regulating their energy, broadcasting signals that others unconsciously interpret. This is why someone can feel crippling fear inside, yet still hold the room with their presence. It is not because they eradicated doubt. It is because they learned to direct energy outward in a controlled, deliberate manner. This reframing dissolves one of the most persistent myths, that confidence is a permanent trait some people simply possess. It is not encoded in personality, nor is it reserved for extroverts or charmers. It is a physiological state, as malleable as heart rate or breath. And like any state, it can be influenced, triggered, and harnessed. The trembling hand can be steadied, the rapid pulse slowed, the anxious energy transmuted into composure. What appears to be inner belief is, more often than not, mastery of these subtle biological levers. But this raises a critical distinction. If confidence is energy, then arrogance and insecurity are distortions of the same source. Arrogance is energy left unchecked, spilling outward without restraint, overwhelming rather than guiding. It masks weakness with bluster, demanding recognition rather than earning it. Insecurity, on the other hand, is energy turned inward, folded against itself, suffocating before it can reach the world. Both are misuses of the same raw material. True confidence sits between these extremes, controlled energy projected outward with intention. Think of a candle flame. Too small, and it flickers unseen, unable to provide light. Too wild, and it rages out of control, burning everything around it. But when contained and directed, the flame becomes useful, illuminating and guiding. Confidence works the same way. This is why society's advice often fails. Believe in yourself addresses the mind but ignores the body. Fake it until you make it acknowledges performance but reduces it to imitation, overlooking the underlying mechanics. Real confidence does not begin with belief, it begins with energy, and belief often follows only after the energy has been mastered. The person who stands tall and breathes deeply may not feel confident at first, but their body sends signals both inward and outward. The heart steadies, the voice strengthens, others respond, and slowly, the performance becomes reality. There is a reason stage actors often describe transformation as beginning in the body. The costume, the movement, the postural precede the belief. Confidence emerges not as a trick of thought, but as a physical reality projected into the space around them. What feels like psychology is often physiology disguised. This is not to dismiss the mind's role. Thoughts matter, belief matters, but the sequence is reversed from what we have been told. Energy comes first, thought second. The wolf bristles before it believes. The human straightens before they know. We do not think our way into confidence, we move, breathe, and project our way into it, and our thoughts scramble to keep up. Recognizing this truth carries profound consequences. It means that no one is disqualified from confidence. Introvert or extrovert, pessimist or optimist, it does not matter. Energy flows through every body, and every body can learn to regulate it. The trembling voice can be trained, the restless body can be calmed, the shrinking presence can be expanded. What culture painted as personality is, in fact, practice, but it also forces us to confront an uncomfortable reality. If confidence is merely energy, then it can be manufactured, performed, and faked. It can be projected without sincerity, wielded as a weapon of manipulation. History is filled with figures who cloaked their insecurities beneath a masterful display of controlled energy, convincing entire nations to believe in them. This is why confidence alone cannot be trusted as evidence of truth. It is not proof of wisdom or morality. It is proof of control, and yet, therein lies its double-edged beauty. Confidence is not about lying to others, nor about lying to yourself. It is about understanding the primal current that already flows through you, and learning to channel it deliberately rather than letting it run wild. When you see confidence not as a fixed trait, but as energy, the illusion falls away. Suddenly, you realize that the distance between who you are and who you want to be is not as wide as you once imagined. Because confidence does not belong to the chosen few. It belongs to whoever learns to control their flame. 5 centuries ago, in the turbulent city-states of Renaissance Italy, a man named Niccolò Machiavelli wrote a small book that would outlive him by centuries. The Prince. At first glance, it was a manual for rulers how to hold power, how to subdue rivals, how to survive in a world where treachery was the norm. But beneath its pragmatic strategies was a disturbing truth about human nature. People are not ruled by reality, but by perception. And perception bends to confidence. Machiavelli's genius was his willingness to strip away illusions. While others preached about virtue, morality, or divine authority, he asked a simpler question: what works? His answer was unsettling. It is better to appear virtuous than to be virtuous. Better to appear strong than to be strong. The appearance of confidence, stability, and certainty often matters more than the reality behind it. People crave reassurance, not truth. They follow decisiveness, not hesitation. Consider Julius Caesar. When he led his army to the banks of the Rubicon River in 49 BCE, the law forbade him from crossing. To do so would spark civil war. Hesitation could have destroyed him, yet Caesar projected complete certainty. He crossed the river with a single declaration: the die is cast. That act of unflinching confidence altered history. The Republic fell, the Empire rose, and Caesar's name became synonymous with power itself. The confidence of one man reshaped the destiny of millions. Centuries later, Napoleon Bonaparte would wield charisma like a weapon. Accounts describe how he could stand before exhausted soldiers, his presence alone reviving their spirit. He was not the tallest, nor the strongest, but his ability to radiate certainty in the face of chaos made him almost mythological in the eyes of his men. Even when his resources dwindled, even when his empire fractured, his aura of confidence sustained loyalty far longer than reason should have allowed. Machiavelli would not have been surprised. For him, leadership was not about truth, but theater. A ruler who hesitated, who revealed uncertainty, would be devoured by rivals and abandoned by followers. But a ruler who projected strength, even if privately filled with doubt, could command obedience. The performance of confidence becomes political currency, buying trust and submission where facts alone cannot. This principle is not confined to emperors and generals. It exists in every layer of human society. In groups, whether small or vast, people instinctively search for signals of stability. When fear or uncertainty spreads, they look for the figure who appears certain. In that figure, they find comfort. even if that comfort is built on illusion. The psychology is simple. Uncertainty is unbearable. A confident leader, even one who is wrong, feels safer than no leader at all. History provides darker reminders of this truth. The 20th century gave rise to demagogues who mastered the theater of confidence. They spoke with conviction, never wavering, never apologizing, offering certainty in times of crisis. Their followers were not drawn primarily by logic or evidence, but by the magnetic pull of decisiveness. When crowds are afraid, it is not truth they crave, but energy, the steady signal of a leader who seems unshakable. This is why lessons endure. His observations were not cynical exaggerations, but clinical dissections of how humans behave. He recognized that appearances outweigh reality because human perception is biased toward energy signals. We judge before we think. We sense before we reason. A trembling voice, a downward glance, a faltering decision, these small cracks can shatter authority. But a firm voice, a steady posture, an unwavering projection of certainty can mask weakness long enough to consolidate real power. The implication is profound. Confidence, reframed through Machiavelli, is not self-help advice, is political technology. It is the invisible currency of influence. In every negotiation, in every gathering, in every hierarchy, the one who controls their energy and projects it with composure becomes the gravitational center around which others orbit. Power is not seized merely through weapons or wealth. It is seized by mastering the performance of certainty. This does not mean that confidence alone is enough. Caesar and Napoleon had military genius, but genius without confidence often dies unheard. How many brilliant minds remain in obscurity because their energy falters in front of others? How many truths are ignored because they were spoken with hesitation rather than conviction? In politics, business, and even personal relationships, the decisive voice often triumphs over the accurate one. Modern life illustrates this principle with disturbing clarity. Watch a press conference in the aftermath of crisis. People rarely scrutinize the technical accuracy of every statement. Instead, they scan for signs. Does the leader appear calm? Do they speak with certainty? Do they radiate the energy of control? If yes, trust builds even if the substance is hollow. If no, trust collapses even if the information is sound. The perception of confidence is often more important than the reality of competence. Machiavelli's mirror forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth. Human beings are not wired to follow the most honest or the most capable. We are wired to follow those who radiate certainty, especially in times of fear. Confidence, when projected as energy, becomes survival instinct, both for leaders and for those who choose to follow them. This is why confidence must be understood, not merely as personal growth, but as a weapon of influence. Those who wield it can guide nations, bend history, and reshape collective belief. Those who lack it, regardless of their wisdom, may find themselves ignored, replaced, or forgotten. Confidence, through Machiavelli's eyes, is no longer a feel-good idea about self-belief. It is a mirror reflecting power itself. And power, as history proves, belongs to those who master the art of appearing unshakable. Even when chaos consumes them within, what we call confidence is not a mysterious force bestowed on a lucky few. It is a process, a pattern of signals, running through body and brain, waiting to be harnessed. To understand this, we must leave the realm of philosophy for a moment and descend into the machinery of human psychology and neuroscience, because only then do we see that confidence is not an emotion, nor even a belief. It is an act of control. Begin with the body. When you stand upright, expand your chest, or slow your breath, something subtle but powerful takes place. Your body does not merely project these signals outward, it also sends them inward. This is the principle of physiological feedback loops. Posture affects hormones, breath alters nervous system states, Tone of voice shapes emotional regulation. The loop runs in both directions. Fear changes your body, but changing your body changes fear. The trembling voice, the shallow breath, the collapsing posture, they reinforce the cycle of anxiety. But the controlled voice, the steady breath, the grounded stance, they feed the brain a different story. Even if you feel doubt, the body whispers certainty back to the mind until doubt weakens. This is why ancient practices, like meditation and martial arts, emphasized breath before thought. Breath regulates the nervous system. It is the steering wheel of the body's energy. A shallow breath accelerates panic, but a deliberate one slows the storm, converting chaotic energy into something usable. Confidence is not the absence of adrenaline. It is the mastery of it. Neuroscience gives us another clue. Humans are wired with mirror neurons, specialized cells that fire not only when we act, but when we observe others acting. These neurons are why we flinch when someone else gets hurt, why laughter spreads through a room, why anxiety can feel contagious. But the same is true for confidence. When someone speaks with composure, their calm registers in our nervous system, as if it were our own. When someone radiates certainty, our brains mirror that signal. Confidence spreads not through reason, but through resonance. This explains why a single calm figure can stabilize a group in crisis, while a single panicked figure can infect a crowd with fear. Energy flows between people faster than words can travel. Machiavelli may not have known the term mirror neurons, but he understood the principle well. To project confidence is to control not only yourself, but also the nervous systems of others. And yet, the raw material of confidence often begins with something we misinterpret. The stress response, the pounding heart, the racing breath, the surge of adrenaline. Most of us label these sensations as fear, but biology does not assign them meaning. They are neutral energy, prepared for action. The body cannot distinguish between the excitement of opportunity and the terror of risk. It only knows that something important is happening. The interpretation belongs to the mind. One person feels the same energy and calls it panic. Another feels it and calls it readiness. Reframing this energy is the secret. Public speakers who master their craft rarely eliminate nerves. They transmute them. They interpret the adrenaline as fuel, not as danger. Athletes standing at the edge of performance, soldiers before battle, leaders before vast crowds all experience the same physiological storm. The difference lies in whether they drown in it or ride its current. Machiavelli, though writing centuries before neuroscience, grasped this truth intuitively. He never advised rulers to rid themselves of weakness. Instead, he urged them to disguise it behind composure and controlled displays of power. The internal chaos could remain, but it must never leak through posture or tone. Appearances mattered more than reality. What we now understand through mirror neurons and feedback loops, he articulated through the brutal language of survival. When we put these insights together, a new picture emerges. Confidence is not about silencing fear or manufacturing belief. It is about energy management. Breath shapes chemistry. Posture signals strength. Voice regulates perception. Adrenaline becomes either paralysis or propulsion depending on how it is framed. These small acts compound into presence, and presence becomes influence. The practical consequences are staggering. It means confidence is not a fixed identity, but a trainable skill. It is not about who you are, but about what you repeatedly do with your energy. Anyone can practice breath control. Anyone can train posture. Anyone can learn to steady tone and pace. The biology does not discriminate. The illusion that some are destined to be confident and others not collapses once we see the machinery behind the feeling. But there is a darker undertone as well. If confidence is reducible to controllable signals, then it is easily weaponized. A leader need not be competent, moral, or even sane to project composure. They only need to master the signals others unconsciously crave. a steady gaze, a decisive tone, a controlled presence. These alone can inspire loyalty, even if they conceal inner chaos. This is why confidence cannot be equated with truth. It is a skill, not a virtue. A manipulator may master it as well as, or even better than, a visionary. Still, the recognition is empowering. For centuries, confidence has been treated as an ineffable gift, leaving many to believe they lack it forever. But biology tells a different story. Confidence is a pattern of control. It is the ability to intercept the body's chaotic signals, to redirect energy outward, and to shape perception through discipline rather than accident. What once seemed mystical is revealed as mechanical, and what is mechanical can be learned. The paradox is clear. Inside, you may feel the storm, but outside, you can project calm. Others will mirror your calm, feeding it back to you, reinforcing the cycle until the illusion becomes real. Confidence begins as control, but ends as belief. Energy becomes presence, presence becomes power, and so, the path to mastery is not about waiting for fear to vanish. It is about learning to bend fear into fuel, to disguise weakness in strength, and to transform raw energy into composure. Machiavelli would remind us, reality matters far less than appearance. But psychology now reveals why appearance works so effectively. It is not deception alone. It is biology, hardwired into us, compelling us to respond to controlled energy as though it were certainty itself. Human beings live on a stage. Most of us prefer not to admit it, but every social interaction is a kind of performance. From classrooms to courtrooms, from job interviews to first dates, from the boardroom to the halls of politics, we are actors in an endless theater of perception. And within this theater, confidence is not measured by what is true, but by what looks true. The sociologist Irving Goffman once described human interaction as a dramatic performance. According to him, life is not merely lived, it is staged. We wear costumes in the form of clothes and titles. We use scripts in the form of words and gestures. We perform for audiences, whether they are strangers, colleagues, or friends. And the success of this performance depends not on the authenticity of the actor, but on how convincingly they inhabit their role. Confidence, in this framework, is the most important prop on stage. A teacher who projects authority will be respected, even if they doubt their own expertise. A politician who appears decisive will be trusted even if their decisions are reckless. A lover who carries themselves with certainty will attract interest even if they are plagued with insecurity. The stage does not reward truth, it rewards believability. This is why propaganda has always leaned on confidence more than accuracy. Consider the grand rallies of the 20th century, where authoritarian regimes orchestrated spectacles of certainty. Leaders stood before massive crowds, their voices thunderous, their gestures rehearsed, their confidence unshakable. The details of their promises often collapsed under scrutiny, but scrutiny was beside the point. What mattered was the theater, the performance of strength, unity, and inevitability. The audience did not leave with facts. They left with conviction. Cult leaders, throughout history, have mastered the same craft. They project absolute certainty about the most implausible ideas. Their confidence becomes contagious, spreading through the group until doubt itself feels like betrayal. Followers rarely ask for evidence, because the performance of unwavering belief feels more convincing than truth could ever be. In uncertain times, people do not cling to data. They cling to certainty, even when it is manufactured. This dynamic repeats across media landscapes. Consider the rise of television personalities and influencers who command millions of followers. Rarely are they experts in all they discuss. What they master is not always knowledge, but delivery. The unwavering tone, the direct gaze, the certainty. In their voice, these become more persuasive than content. The confidence of performance becomes a substitute for reality. Why are people so drawn to this performance of confidence? The answer lies in psychology. Life is filled with ambiguity, uncertainty, and fear. To follow someone who seems unshakable is to borrow a sense of stability. Their performance provides relief, a shield against the chaos of doubt. When someone radiates certainty, it feels safer to align with them, even if reason whispers otherwise. The confident performer becomes a psychological anchor in a storm of uncertainty. Yet this theater of confidence carries a darker undertone. Performances are not neutral. They can liberate or manipulate. A leader who understands the theater may inspire hope, courage, and resilience in their audience. But another leader, with the same tools, can inspire hatred, obedience, and destruction. The difference lies not in the performance itself, but in the motives behind it. The danger is that the line between competence and performance is often invisible to the audience. A surgeon may save lives with skill, but a charismatic con artist may attract more followers simply by projecting certainty. A competent policymaker may hesitate because they weigh complexity, while a reckless demagogue gains applause by simplifying everything with unshakable confidence. In theater, hesitation looks like weakness, even when it is wisdom. Certainty looks like strength, even when it is delusion. This explains why societies can be led astray so easily. The performance of confidence overrides reason. Crowds do not stop to dissect truth when they feel the comfort of certainty. They accept the stagecraft at face value. They confuse performance with reality, and once they do, perception hardens into belief, and belief into action. But the stage does not belong only to the powerful. Every individual participates in the theater of confidence daily. When you walk into a room, when you present your ideas, when you negotiate, when you love, when you lead, your audience responds not just to what you say, but to how you project your energy. You are both actor and spectator, shaping and being shaped by the performances of others. This realization forces us to confront a difficult paradox. On one hand, confidence as performance empowers. It means you are not condemned by self-doubt. You can choose to step into the role, to project certainty, to control how others perceive your energy. On the other hand, it means you are vulnerable to those who weaponize the same theater, using it to deceive, manipulate, or control. The theater of confidence is therefore both a tool and a trap. It can elevate the hesitant into leaders, or drag entire societies into disaster. Its power lies not in truth, but in appearance, not in reality, but in performance. And so, the lesson is not to reject the theater, for it is inescapable. The lesson is to recognize it, to study it, and to wield it consciously. To understand that every interaction is a stage, every person an actor, and confidence the most valuable role one can play, but also to remain vigilant, knowing that the performance of certainty is not always the same as the possession of wisdom. Confidence in the theater of human life is not just energy. It is choreography designed, rehearsed, and performed, and when the curtain rises, the actor who masters this performance commands the stage. Whether they deserve it or not, we live in an age where information is infinite, but certainty is scarce. The paradox of the modern world is that the more knowledge we accumulate, the more fragmented reality becomes. In this environment, confidence has not weakened, it has only grown in value. Politicians, influencers, and CEOs rise to prominence, not necessarily by being right, but by projecting unwavering certainty. In an ocean of noise, the voice that sounds most convinced is the one that gets heard. This is not an accident. Our minds are wired to interpret confidence as a shortcut for truth. We evolved in small tribes where hesitation signaled danger and certainty signaled leadership. Today, those instincts collide with global platforms. A politician who speaks with absolute conviction can overshadow critics who bring nuance. A CEO who declares bold visions can attract billions in investment, even when the reality is far less stable. And an influencer who performs self-assurance can build an empire of followers, without ever offering proof of expertise. Social media amplifies this dynamic. These platforms do not reward accuracy, they reward engagement. And engagement thrives on conviction. Posts delivered with certainty travel further, gather more likes, and create stronger emotional reactions than those laced with doubt or complexity. The result is a digital stage where confidence, no matter how unfounded, often outperforms truth itself. Think about the viral figure who gains millions of followers by offering simple answers to complex problems. The appeal is not in the depth of their knowledge, but in the way they embody conviction. They eliminate ambiguity, they radiate certainty, and that certainty feels magnetic. In a world drowning in contradictions, their confidence becomes a form of psychological relief. This is why misinformation spreads so easily. Facts are fragile, requiring context and evidence. Confidence is simple, fast, and contagious. The bold claim, the absolute statement, the unflinching tone, these spread like wildfire. And once repeated often enough, they begin to sound like truth. Confidence becomes not just a performance, but a weapon, reshaping public opinion, bending reality itself. But this modern theater of confidence extends beyond politics and media. It reaches into our personal lives. Consider the job market, where interviews often measure not the true capabilities of a candidate, but their ability to project confidence under pressure. Consider dating apps, where self-presentation relies more on how one frames their identity than the depth of who they are. Even friendships and communities are influenced by those who appear certain, decisive, and unshaken. The unsettling question is this: do we now live in an era where confidence matters more than reality? If the most confident voice in the room wins, regardless of whether they are right, what happens to truth? There is a temptation to despair at this realization, to see humanity as forever trapped in the theater of appearances. But there is another way to read this moment. If confidence is not about inner belief, but about the regulation and projection of energy, then it can be learned, practiced, and mastered. The same techniques that allow demagogues to manipulate can also empower the hesitant to rise above their self-doubt. This is the double-edged nature of confidence in the modern world. It can liberate individuals who once silenced themselves. It can help people step into leadership, into influence, into courage. But it can also distort entire societies, leading them down paths built on nothing more than conviction, divorced from truth. We are left, then, with a choice. Do we remain passive, victims of the most confident voices around us? Or do we study the mechanics of this energy, learning to wield it without falling prey to its darker uses? Mastery requires awareness. Awareness that when we scroll through feeds, attend speeches, or listen to leaders, what we are often consuming is not reality, but performance. Awareness that our instincts, wired to equate confidence with truth, can be hijacked. And awareness that our own self-doubt does not disqualify us from stepping onto the stage, only signals that we must learn to control the energy coursing through us. In a sense, the age of uncertainty has made the art of confidence more crucial than ever. Not because the world is less truthful, but because the sheer abundance of competing truths demands stronger projection. To be heard, one must not only have something to say, but embody it with energy that cuts through the noise. The irony is that in chasing confidence, we are not seeking authenticity, but authority. We are not searching for what is real, but for what feels stable. And in that pursuit, we must ask ourselves, are we content to be spectators of this theater, swayed by those who project certainty? Or will we become conscious actors, using the stage not to deceive, but to reveal, not to manipulate, but to empower? The echo of Machiavelli's lesson is unmistakable. Appearances still dominate reality. But unlike in the Renaissance, where theater was limited to rulers and courts, today the stage is global, and every individual is a performer. Confidence is no longer just political currency. is the currency of visibility itself, and so, in this age of uncertainty, confidence has become both shield and sword, a shield against the chaos of doubt, and a sword for those who know how to wield it. The question is no longer whether confidence matters more than truth. The question is whether we will master it or be mastered by those who already have. If confidence is energy in its purest form, then mastery begins, not with belief, but with control. Too often, people think of confidence as an internal state, something you either have or don't. But the truth is far simpler and far more empowering. Confidence is not a mysterious gift. It is an energy that flows through the body and mind, and like any energy, it can be harnessed, shaped, and directed. The first level of mastery is physical control. Our posture, breath, and micro-movements send constant feedback not only to others, but to ourselves. A slouched spine whispers weakness. To the nervous system, a shallow breath signals fear. A restless hand betrays doubt. Yet when we stand tall, when we expand the chest, when we breathe deeply and rhythmically, the body generates signals of strength. These signals feed back into the brain, altering chemistry, shifting hormones, recalibrating the nervous system. This is not self-help. Fantasy is biology. You don't need to feel confident to act confident. The action itself produces the energy. Breath is the anchor. Under pressure, the heart races, adrenaline surges, the body trembles. Most interpret this as fear, but it is not. Fear it is fuel. Adrenaline is raw energy, meant to sharpen perception and mobilize strength. The mistake is to frame it as panic. The mastery lies in reframing it as power. Before a speech, an interview, or a confrontation, the pulse quickens not because you are weak, but because your body is preparing you for war. To master confidence, one must learn to ride the adrenaline wave rather than drown in it. Breathe into it. Slow the exhale. Let the surge amplify presence instead of eroding it. The second level of mastery is mental reframing. Every human feels doubt. Every leader, every general, every orator who ever commanded crowds has felt the shiver of uncertainty. The difference is not the absence of doubt, but the ability to transform it. Fear says, "What if I fail?" Energy says, "This is fuel, this is strength, this is life." The mind must learn to recast the sensation, to see trembling hands not as collapse, but as ignition. Machiavelli would say, "Never reveal weakness, but never fear it either. Use it, bend it into performance." Then comes perception management, the most Machiavellian layer of mastery. Humans do not see reality, they see appearances. You may be uncertain inside, but what matters is what you radiate. A decisive tone, a controlled gesture, a steady gaze, these override words themselves. In politics, in business, in personal life, the person who projects certainty wins allegiance, even if they are quietly filled with doubt. This is not deceit, it is theater, and theater, when aligned with intent, becomes influence. But perception management is not simply about constant displays of confidence. True mastery requires strategic restraint. Just as a skilled general does not deploy all troops at once, the art of confidence is knowing when to radiate and when to withhold. Confidence is energy, and energy carries weight. If it is poured into every moment, it becomes noise. But when it is held back, controlled, and released at the precise moment, it becomes power. A leader who speaks calmly most of the time but strikes the table once commands more respect than one who shouts constantly. A negotiator who sits silent for minutes before speaking with clarity wields more weight than one who fills the room with words. Restraint creates contrast, and contrast creates impact. This is the subtlety most overlooked. Confidence is not permanent intensity, it is rhythm, expansion and contraction, expression and silence. The most magnetic figures in history mastered this rhythm. They knew that to always appear certain is to dull the force of certainty. By choosing moments, By timing their displays, they shaped energy like artists shaping clay. The final step is integration, becoming both scientist and artist of one's own energy. The scientist studies the mechanics, breath, posture, hormones, perception. The artist learns timing, tone, and rhythm. Together, they create mastery. This mastery is not about pretending. It is about precision. It is about using the energy already within you, sculpting it, directing it outward, and bending it to purpose. To master confidence, you do not need to eliminate fear, nor silence doubt. You need only to control energy. The tremor in your chest, the rush in your veins, the uncertainty in your mind, all of it is material, raw material, and like all raw material, it can be shaped into something stronger, sharper, and more commanding. The world is full of those who scatter their energy recklessly, mistaking noise for power. But the few who learn to channel it, those who stand steady, while others panic, who project calm certainty when others collapse. These are the ones history remembers. They are not always the smartest, nor the most skilled, but they are the masters of their own energy. And in the theater of human life, that mastery is everything. Confidence is not a gift you wait to receive. It is not luck, or fate, or accident. It is energy, your energy. And the moment you learn to control it, you no longer follow those who radiate certainty, you become one of them. Confidence is not virtue. It is not morality. It is not truth. It is energy, stripped of ethics, stripped of reason, stripped even of reality itself. In its rawest form, it is neutral, like fire, like electricity, like the tide. And as with all primal forces, its value depends on whose hands wield it. History shows this with brutal clarity. Entire nations have followed the confident lie over the hesitant truth. The words of dictators thundered louder than the warnings of scholars. Charismatic leaders have raised empires and destroyed them, not through evidence, but through unwavering projection. Confidence has filled stadiums, inspired armies, and drowned reason in applause. In the wrong hands, it deceives, manipulates, and enslaves. But confidence also liberates. It is the same energy that allows a teacher to ignite a young mind, a doctor to steady a trembling patient, an activist to stand unshaken before power. It allows an individual, small and seemingly powerless, to bend the course of events simply by radiating conviction when others falter. Confidence, directed with clarity and purpose, is one of the few forces that can cut through fear and uncertainty, lighting the way forward. This is the paradox. Confidence is both dangerous and indispensable. It bends perception, and perception, as Machiavelli reminded us, is often stronger than truth itself. If the world sees you as certain, it will treat you as certain. And when the world treats you as certain, reality shifts accordingly. Perception becomes power. That is why confidence is not something you can ignore. To reject it entirely is to leave yourself defenseless in a world shaped by appearances. To misuse it is to become a tyrant of perception. The task, then, is mastery, without corruption, to control the energy without being consumed by it. But make no mistake, if you do not master your own energy, someone else will master theirs, and they will use it to control you. Every advertisement, every political speech, every viral personality on your screen is already doing this. They know that certainty sells, that conviction persuades, that the human mind craves leaders who seem unshakable, even if they are wrong. If you remain blind to this, you will be ruled by it. So the choice is unavoidable. Either confidence becomes your tool, or it becomes your cage. You can treat it as a performance, a manipulation, a weapon, or you can treat it as a responsibility, an instrument of clarity and empowerment, but you cannot escape it. It is woven into human psychology, into society, into every hierarchy that governs our lives, and so we arrive at the final truth. Confidence is not who you are. It is not a reflection of your worth, nor a measure of your essence. It is energy, volatile, malleable, endlessly renewable. It is something you can shape, direct, and project at will. When mastered, it does not erase fear, it transforms it. It does not create certainty, it simulates it. And in a world that bends to perception, simulation often becomes indistinguishable from reality. The dangerous gift of confidence, then, is this: it allows you to bend the world without changing who you are inside. That is both its power and its peril. For if you forget that distinction, you will mistake energy for truth, theater for reality, appearance for essence. But if you remember, if you treat confidence not as identity, but as controlled energy, you gain the ability to navigate uncertainty without surrendering to it. You gain the ability to stand steady while others falter, and you gain the freedom to shape perception, not as a tyrant, but as an architect, because in the end, confidence is not the story you tell yourself. It is the story the world believes when you step onto the stage. And the world will always believe someone. The only question is, will it believe you?